You ever wonder how someone can become so deeply rooted in your mind, even when there's been no message, no call, nothing at all, no notifications lighting up your screen, no late night "are you awake" texts, no subtle check-ins, just silence. And yet her presence feels louder than ever. That's the kind of silence I'm talking about, the one that lingers, that echoes, that wraps around your chest like a memory you can't shake. When she's always in your mind without any communication, it means something more than just missing someone. It means she lives in a part of you that logic can't touch. There are times you'll be out in the world doing the most ordinary things, driving, working, cooking, maybe just walking down a street you've walked 100 times before, and she'll suddenly flash across your thoughts like a whisper. You weren't trying to think of her, you weren't chasing memories, but there she is. Her laugh, her eyes, the way she looked at you during a quiet pause, it all rushes in, uninvited but never unwanted. This isn't about obsession. It's not even about longing in the desperate sense. It's deeper. It's the kind of connection where your soul feels like it's still holding on to a moment, a feeling, a spark that never really burned out. Because when someone touches you at that level, no words are needed for the bond to persist. Her silence doesn't erase her presence, it amplifies it. And sometimes, that silence says more than any conversation ever could. When she doesn't reach out but your heart still hears her, that's when you start realizing there's something unfinished between you. Or maybe something eternal. A story written in invisible ink, only seen under the right light, felt, not read. You start to ask yourself, why her? Why does she stay, even in her absence? Why is it her name that echoes when the world quiets down? And the answer isn't always clear, because love, real love, doesn't follow clean rules. It doesn't care about time zones or schedules or how many months it's been since you last saw her face. When it's real, it carves a place for itself, and once it's in, it rarely leaves without leaving traces. You might try to distract yourself, talk to new people, fill your life with noise, and still, in the quiet of night or the stillness of early morning, her memory returns, not to torment you, but to remind you of what once was or what could have been. And that's a powerful thing. It means her energy is still connected to yours. It means that the silence you both share isn't just absence, it's presence in another form. Because love doesn't always need to be loud. It doesn't always need a daily check-in or a good morning text to prove its strength. Sometimes the deepest kind of connection exists in the spaces in between, in the pause, in the unspoken, in the stillness. When she's constantly on your mind with no communication at all, it means her soul left an imprint. It means she reached a depth inside you that no one else has. We don't talk enough about that kind of love, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't demand anything but still changes everything. The kind that doesn't need validation through social media or daily interaction. It simply is. It breathes beneath the surface. It stirs when you least expect it. It lingers in your thoughts not because you haven't moved on, but because it was never about moving on. It was about how deeply you felt when she was near. And let me tell you this, if she's in your mind like that, you're not imagining it. You're not being dramatic. You're not holding on to something that wasn't real. Your heart knows what it felt. Your soul remembers what it touched. You may not have the words for it. You may not even have closure, but you have the weight of her presence in your silence, and that means everything. Maybe one day you'll talk again. Maybe you won't. But her silence, right now, doesn't mean she's gone. It means what you shared wasn't ordinary. And some connections, they don't need noise to matter. They just exist, quietly, powerfully, eternally. And if you feel her in your thoughts when everything else is still, don't question it, accept it, feel it. Because her silence is saying what her lips never did. You ever notice how some people stay connected to you, no matter the distance, no matter the silence? It's like there's this invisible thread that ties you to them, no matter how far apart life pulls you. When she's always in your mind without any communication, that thread becomes undeniable. And maybe, just maybe, it means something sacred. Because when a connection is real, when it's written into your soul, distance doesn't dilute it. Silence doesn't sever it. In fact, the absence only makes the bond feel stronger. We're taught to believe that if someone cares, they'll show it. They'll text, they'll call, they'll keep the conversation going. And yes, that's often true. But what they never teach you is that sometimes real connection doesn't play by those rules. Sometimes the bond runs so deep, so quietly profound, that even without words, you still feel them. You still carry them. You still sense their presence, like a ghost of something beautiful that refuses to fade. And when that happens, when she lingers in your thoughts without ever reaching out, it isn't just memory, it's not just nostalgia, it's energy, it's her essence weaving itself into your days, not through technology, not through interaction, but through the subtle ways the heart remembers. She becomes a feeling more than a person, and yet somehow she remains more vivid than anyone else around you. Maybe your paths have diverged, maybe she's in another city living another life, maybe months or even years have passed, but still she visits your thoughts like she never left. And you know what that means? It means the connection is alive. Quietly, invisibly, but undeniably alive. Because some people don't just pass through your life, they become part of your inner landscape. They shape the way you see love, the way you feel silence, the way you navigate loneliness. You may not talk, but she's there when you hear a certain song. She's there in the scent of someone's perfume in a crowded room. She's in the words you almost say to someone else, but don't, because they were meant for her. And that's when you realize communication isn't always verbal. The soul doesn't need sound. The heart doesn't need a signal to recognize someone it once danced with. That's what real connection looks like. It doesn't break under pressure. It doesn't need maintenance to survive. It's not fragile. It's sacred. And sometimes, when we stop hearing from someone, we assume it's over. We assume it meant less than it did. But what if it meant more? What if it went so deep that words were no longer necessary? What if the connection was never meant to be loud? It was meant to be felt in the quietest parts of yourself. And here's something that will shake you. Sometimes she's silent, not because she's gone, but because she feels the same, because she doesn't know what to say, because she's afraid if she opens that door again, it'll either change everything or break her all over again. But that silence, it doesn't mean disconnection. It means protection, preservation, reverence. We live in a world where constant contact is normalized, where read receipts and replies are how we measure care. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if the strongest connections don't rely on daily communication? What if the love that's meant to last isn't the one that shows up every day, but the one that shows up inside you every day, even when she doesn't? It's a different kind of closeness. One that doesn't depend on reminders, one that survives the chaos of time, one that doesn't vanish with silence, but instead finds a way to stay alive through the space between you. And if she's still in your heart, if you still feel her across that distance, if she still colors your thoughts with memories and what-ifs, don't ignore that. Don't brush it off as a phase. Sometimes the deepest truths are the ones we can't explain. Sometimes distance reveals what proximity could never make clear. So if she's always in your mind, without messages, without interaction, without any obvious reason, it's not weakness, it's not foolishness. It's a sign, a quiet, persistent sign that the connection between you was never ordinary. That maybe, just maybe, it still isn't. Some connections don't need noise, they just need a heart that listens. There's a kind of love that never gets spoken. It doesn't show itself in grand gestures or perfect timing. It lives quietly in the spaces between words, in the glances that lasted a second too long, in the way your heart tightened when she looked away. If she's still in your mind, even without any communication, it could be because the love between you was never loud, it was never announced. It was the kind of love that hid itself in silence, not because it wasn't real, but because it was too real. The truth is, some of the deepest loves are the ones that go unsaid. They never got a proper beginning, and they never found an ending either. It's that space in between, the what-ifs, the almost, the nearly, but not quite. That space has weight, and if she's still in your thoughts, it's because that weight hasn't left you. It lingers, not as regret, not as longing, but as a quiet acknowledgement that something beautiful lived between you two, even if it never got a name. Sometimes we think love needs to be expressed, shouted from rooftops, posted on timelines, confirmed by words and constant reassurance. But some loves are quieter. Some loves choose stillness over expression. And just because it wasn't said out loud doesn't mean it wasn't felt deeply. In fact, it's often the ones we couldn't speak of that burrow the deepest into our souls. Maybe you couldn't say it because the timing was wrong. Maybe life pulled you in different directions. Maybe fear got in the way, or pride, or circumstances that you couldn't control. And so instead of confessions, you had moments. Instead of declarations, you had eye contact. Instead of promises, you had silence. But you felt it. And that feeling, raw, unresolved, unspoken, is what still follows you. That's what makes her presence so persistent in your mind. That's why she still lives in the background of your thoughts, even now. Because unspoken love doesn't disappear. It doesn't expire. Just because the words were never said. It becomes a part of you, a part of how you look at people, a part of how you carry yourself, a part of how you recognize depth when you see it again. It teaches you that the strongest emotions don't always need an audience. Sometimes they just need to be felt, deeply, purely, and without apology. And you might think you're the only one feeling it, but maybe, just maybe, she feels it too. Maybe she walks through her life with pieces of you woven into her silence. Maybe she hears your name in places where it doesn't belong. Maybe your memory shows up in her quietest moments when the world is still and her heart is honest. Love like that has a way of finding both people, even if they never speak again. The hardest part about unspoken love is the wondering, the never knowing, the thoughts that creep in late at night when the rest of the world is asleep and you're wide awake, asking yourself if she ever felt it too. And even without answers, that wondering becomes sacred, not painful, not always, just tender, fragile, a reminder of how deeply you are capable of loving someone without needing anything in return. It takes strength to carry a love that was never voiced, to hold it with care, even when it has no destination. But if she's still in your heart, in your thoughts, and in the rhythm of your silence, then that love was real, regardless of how quietly it lived. And sometimes that's enough. Because the truth is, some of the most powerful connections we experience aren't the ones that end in forever. They're the ones that begin in silence and stay alive in the shadows. They're the ones that teach us how deep love can go, even when it's never spoken aloud. And if you can still feel her now, after all this time, with no communication, then you loved her in a way that didn't need words. And if that's the kind of love you gave, then it was beautiful sometimes. The mind will do everything it can to forget someone, to push them into the shadows, to convince you that you've moved on. It tells you to focus on the present, to be rational, to not romanticize something that didn't work. But no matter how hard you try to quiet the noise, your heart keeps bringing her back. Not with logic, not with permission, just with feeling. Over and over again, she returns not in words or texts or updates, but in memories that sneak into your day, in flashes of something you thought you had buried. That's when you realize your heart remembers what your mind is trying so hard to forget. You see, the heart doesn't obey logic. It doesn't understand timelines or emotional detachment. It only knows what it felt. And when something touched you deeply, when someone reached a part of you that no one else had before, your heart holds on to that, even if it ended, even if she's no longer there, even if you both stopped talking, stopped checking in, stopped being present in each other's lives. The connection doesn't vanish just because the communication does. You may find yourself thinking of her during the most random moments, standing in line, folding laundry, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly she's there. Not physically, not in any clear way, but in that rush of emotion that takes over you without warning. That's your heart, reminding you that it hasn't let go, that there's still something about her that lives in you. And it's not weakness, it's not failure to move on, it's just truth. Real love, real connection, it roots itself in your spirit. And even if time passes, even if you've tried to let go, it doesn't always leave when you want it to. It leaves when it's meant to, if at all. The mind can distract you, busy you, convince you to forget, to be strong, to stay detached, but your heart, it's honest in a way your mind will never be. It doesn't pretend, it doesn't wear armor, It feels what it feels, and it holds on not because it's desperate, but because it's human. Sometimes, the people we remember the most are the ones we never got closure with. The ones who came into our lives like a storm and left like a whisper. And the thing about those stories is that they don't get wrapped up neatly. They stay with you because there was something about that person, something you didn't even fully understand, that carved a space into your heart. She became a part of you in a way you never saw coming, and now, even in her silence, her name lives quietly inside your chest. And maybe you've tried to tell yourself it didn't mean much, that it was just a phase, just timing, just confusion. But if that were true, she wouldn't still visit you in your thoughts when the world is quiet. You wouldn't still feel that ache when you hear her favorite song. You wouldn't still wonder if she ever thinks of you too. You wouldn't still feel her name like a pulse beneath your skin. Because when someone matters that deeply, your heart doesn't let go just because your mind says it should. Your heart knows truth. It knows the difference between infatuation and impact. And if she's still in your thoughts, despite the silence, despite the time, despite everything, then she made an impact on you. One you weren't ready for. One you never fully healed from. And that's okay. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. Love doesn't always end with a conversation. Sometimes it just fades into quiet. But fading doesn't mean it's gone. It just means it's resting in a part of you that's still tender. And maybe, deep down, a part of you still hopes, still wonders, still cares. And that doesn't make you broken. It makes you beautifully human. So if your mind is doing everything it can to forget her, but she keeps showing up in your heart, listen. Pay attention to that, because your heart has always known what matters most. There are moments in life when you're moving through the world like everything's normal. Checking your phone, crossing the street, folding laundry, and then suddenly you feel it, a thought of her, a memory, a flash, a scent that brings her back, a song that stirs your chest. It's not random, it's not coincidence. It's the universe reminding you that some souls are meant to leave traces. Not always in your life, but always in your heart. You start noticing her in places she's never been. Her laughter echoes in someone else's joke. Her favorite color appears in the sky. Her name pops up in conversations that have nothing to do with her. And no matter how much time passes, no matter how far she is, there's this subtle feeling that she's still connected to you in a way that defies explanation. It's like the universe won't let you forget her, not completely. And maybe it's not trying to torture you. Maybe it's trying to tell you something. And when someone enters your life and shifts your world, emotionally, spiritually, it creates a ripple. And that ripple doesn't just disappear when the relationship ends or the messages stop. It moves through your life, showing up in quiet reminders, unexpected signs, subtle nudges. Not because you're holding on too tightly, but because what you shared was meant to matter, and it still does. The universe doesn't always speak in words. It speaks in timing, in symbols, in those strange coincidences that make your heart skip a beat. And sometimes it speaks by sending you the same thought over and over again. Her name, her face, that moment you shared that you can't seem to shake, and maybe you wonder why. Why now? Why still? Because her energy was never just a moment. It wasn't just about what happened. It was about who she was to your soul. Maybe she wasn't just a girl you liked. Maybe she was something more, a mirror, a lesson, a reminder of who you are when you let your walls down. And the universe knows how important that is. It brings her back into your thoughts, not to haunt you, but to guide you, to tell you that what you felt was real, that the bond you had wasn't just an accident, that she wasn't just passing through. You were meant to cross paths. And maybe, just maybe, you're still walking parallel roads. Maybe the timing wasn't right, but the connection was. Maybe the silence now is only a pause, not the end. Or maybe she came into your life not to stay, but to awaken something in you, something only she could have touched. Sometimes we look for closure in conversations, in goodbyes, in clean endings. But what if closure isn't a door that shuts, but a truth that settles inside you? What if she doesn't come back into your life, but she keeps showing up in your world because that love you felt didn't have to lead somewhere to be real? What if it simply had to be felt? When someone leaves a mark that deep, you don't just forget. You don't erase. You carry it quietly, gracefully, and the universe lets you carry it because it wants you to remember what it felt like to care that deeply, to connect that completely, to love without needing to explain why. And if you've ever doubted it, if you've ever told yourself it was just in your head, or maybe it didn't mean as much to her as it did to you, look around. Look at the signs. Look at how she still moves through your memories like wind through trees. She's not gone. She's just woven into the fabric of your story. So no, you're not imagining it. You're not weak for thinking of her after all this time. You're not holding on to something that's supposed to be forgotten. The universe doesn't waste energy. And if it keeps placing her in your path, in your mind, in your dreams, in the music that plays, when you're alone, it's because there's something about her soul that still echoes with yours. And sometimes that's all the proof you need that it was never ordinary. If she's still in your mind, even after all this time, without a single word exchanged between you, it means you loved her in a way that words could never hold. That kind of love doesn't disappear. It doesn't fade quietly into the background. It stays. It breathes through your silence, through your memories, through the way your heart still softens when you think of her. And not because you haven't moved on, not because you're stuck, but because what you felt for her was real. So real that no goodbye could ever fully erase it. Some love stories never get spoken into the world. They never get posted, never get witnessed by others, but they live just as powerfully in the spaces we keep sacred. And you know this kind of love because you felt it when you were with her. Not in the big moments, but in the quiet ones. The way she looked at you when she didn't think you were watching. The sound of her voice when she spoke about the